Dae-hyun wiped down the last table in his section, his feet aching from another double shift. The Golden Nebula restaurant was finally quiet after the dinner rush. Through the massive viewing window, he could see the stars stretching endlessly beyond Nexus Prime Station. He had been working here for 6 months now, and the view still took his breath away sometimes. He checked his datapad. Another payment sent to his sister Yuna back on Earth. Her university fees were getting higher, but he would find a way. He always did. The entrance door slid open with a soft hiss. Dae-hyun looked up and froze. An elderly alien stood in the doorway, leaning heavily on a walking staff. The being was tall, almost 7 feet, with pale blue crystalline skin that seemed to glow faintly. Multiple thin tendrils moved slowly from its head, and Dae-hyun recognized the species from his training. A Valthine. He had never seen one in person before. They were reclusive, rarely leaving their home systems. The elderly Valthine moved slowly, each step careful and measured. Dae-hyun could see the being was exhausted, maybe even sick. The crystalline skin flickered weakly instead of glowing steadily. Before Dae-hyun could move, his manager Tae-won appeared from the kitchen. The man's face immediately twisted into a frown. He walked quickly toward the entrance, his expensive shoes clicking on the polished floor. "I'm sorry, but we are fully booked tonight," Tae-won said loudly, not bothering to hide his displeasure. The Valthine's tendrils drooped slightly. A translator device on the being's staff crackled to life. "I only need a small table. I do not require much." Tae-won crossed his arms. "As I said, we are fully booked. Perhaps you should try the food court on level 12. Dae-hyun looked around the restaurant. At least 15 tables were empty. His stomach tightened. This was wrong. The elderly Valthine swayed slightly, gripping the staff tighter. Dae-hyun saw the being's legs trembling. Without thinking, he stepped forward. "Sir, I have a table available in my section," Dae-hyun said, keeping his voice respectful but firm. Tae-won spun around, his eyes flashing with anger. "Dae-hyun, return to your duties." "Manager Tae-won, the guest appears unwell. I can seat them in the corner, very discreet." "I gave you an order," Tae-won hissed, stepping closer. "These creatures have special requirements. They are bad for business. Now step back." The Valthine began to turn slowly toward the door. Dae-hyun saw the being's hand shaking on the staff. Something in his chest twisted. He thought of his own grandfather, who had died 2 years ago. He remembered the old man struggling to walk, too proud to ask for help. Dae-hyun made his decision. He stepped past his manager and gently touched the Valthine's arm. The crystalline skin was cool and smooth under his fingers. "Please, honored guest. This way." Tae-hyun grabbed Dae-hyun's shoulder. "You're making a mistake." Dae-hyun met his manager's eyes. "Maybe, but it's the right mistake to make." He guided the elderly Valthine to a quiet corner table, away from the windows where other diners might stare. The being settled slowly into the reinforced chair, letting out a sound like wind chimes. "Relief," Dae-hyun guessed. "Thank you, young human," the translator said. "I am called Velnus. I'm Dae-hyun. Please wait just a moment." He rushed to the back office, ignoring Tae-won's furious glare. His fingers flew across his personal datapad, searching the station's database. Valthine dietary requirements. He scrolled through pages of information. They didn't eat like humans or most other species. They needed crystallized mineral solutions. Nothing the restaurant stocked. Dae-hyun checked the time. The hydroponics bay would still be open. He pulled off his apron and ran. The hydroponics bay was on the other side of the station. Dae-hyun's lungs burned as he sprinted through the corridors. He reached the bay with 5 minutes to spare before closing. The Arkelian shopkeeper looked annoyed until Dae-hyun explained what he needed. "Valthine mineral supplements? Very expensive, human. 50 credits for a small container." Dae-hyun winced. That was half his daily wage. He transferred the credits anyway. He ran back to the restaurant, the container clutched in his hand. In the kitchen, he carefully prepared a solution following the instructions on the container. He mixed it with purified water and added a small amount of glucose for energy. It wasn't fancy, but it would be safe and nutritious. He carried the glass to Velnus's table. The elderly Valthine's tendrils lifted slightly when Dae-hyun set down the drink. "I apologize that we don't have proper Valthine cuisine," Dae-hyun said. "But this should help. The minerals are fresh from the hydroponics bay." Velnus's crystalline hand touched the glass. The being's skin began to glow a little brighter. "You went to the hydroponics bay?" "For me? Of course. You're my guest. Wellness drank slowly. With each sip, the glow strengthened. The trembling in the being's hands stopped. After a few minutes, Wellness set down the empty glass and looked at Daehyun with eyes like blue stars. You have shown great kindness, Daehyun of Earth. Before Daehyun could respond, Taewon's voice boomed across the restaurant. Daehyun! My office now. Other diners looked up from their meals. Daehyun felt his face flush with embarrassment. He bowed slightly to Wellness. Please excuse me. In the office, Taewon was pacing like a caged animal. Do you have any idea what you've done? You disobeyed a direct order. You left the restaurant during your shift. You used personal funds to serve a guest I specifically refused. He was sick and needed help. That's not your decision to make. Taewon slammed his hand on the desk. I run this establishment, not you. We have standards here. We have procedures. Procedures that say we turn away sick elderly beings? Procedures that keep us profitable? Taewon's face was red now. You think you're some kind of hero? You're just a waiter, a replaceable waiter. Daehyun felt something cold settle in his stomach. He knew what was coming. You're fired, Taewon said, his voice suddenly calm. Effective immediately. Security will escort you out. I understand, Daehyun said quietly. Taewon leaned forward. And I'm marking your termination as insubordination. Good luck finding another job on this station with that on your record. 2 security officers appeared at the door. Daehyun walked back into the restaurant one last time. Wellness was standing now, looking much stronger. The elderly Valthine watched as the security officers flanked Daehyun. I apologize for the disturbance to your meal, Daehyun said to Wellness. The Valthine's tendrils moved in a pattern Daehyun didn't understand. No apology is needed, Daehyun of Earth. You have given me more than you know. The security officers led him out. The doors closed behind him with a final hiss. Daehyun walked back to his tiny quarters in the station's residential section. The room was barely big enough for a bed and a small desk. He sat down and pulled out his datapad. His credit balance showed on the screen. After sending money to Yuna and buying the mineral supplements, he had enough for maybe 2 weeks of food and rent. He lay back on his bed and stared at the ceiling. Tomorrow he would start looking for a new job. But tonight he just felt tired. Tired and strangely at peace. He had done the right thing. Whatever happened next, he could live with that. Outside his small window, the stars continued their eternal dance, indifferent to the small dramas of one human waiter who had just lost everything for doing something kind. Daehyun spent the morning searching through job listings on his datapad. His eyes burned from staring at the screen for hours. Restaurant after restaurant, shop after shop. He sent his application to 20 different places. Not one responded. He checked his employment record again, hoping somehow it had changed. There it was in red letters, terminated for insubordination. That mark would follow him everywhere on the station. His datapad chimed. For a moment, hope flared in his chest. Maybe someone wanted to interview him. He opened the message and his hope died. It was just a reminder that his rent was due in 5 days. Daehyun put his head in his hands. He needed to message Yuna soon, to tell her he might not be able to send money this month. The thought made him feel sick. His datapad chimed again. This time the message header made him sit up straight. It was an official communication from the Valthine embassy. His heart began to pound. What could they want? Had he somehow offended Wellness? Were there legal consequences for serving improper food to a Valthine? He opened the message with shaking hands. Daehyun of Earth. Your presence is requested at the Valthine embassy today at 14 hours. This is a matter of importance. Please confirm your attendance. There was no explanation. No hint of what this was about. Daehyun stared at the message for a long moment, then typed a simple reply. I will be there. The Valthine embassy was located in the diplomatic sector of Nexus Prime, a part of the station Daehyun had never visited. He took 3 different transport tubes to reach it, watching the corridors grow wider and more elegant with each transfer. When he finally reached the embassy entrance, he stopped and stared. The building was unlike anything he had ever seen. The walls were made of living crystal that pulsed with soft blue and purple light. Geometric patterns shifted across the surface like slow-moving water. The air around it seemed to hum with a frequency he could feel in his bones. A human woman stood at the entrance. She was in her 40s with sharp eyes and an expensive suit. She smiled when she saw him. You must be Daehyun. I'm Ambassador Hana. I serve as the human liaison to the Valthine Collective. Daehyun bowed slightly, suddenly very aware of his cheap clothes and worn shoes. Yes, ma'am. I received a message. Please follow me. And don't be nervous. This is a good thing, I promise. She led him through corridors that seemed to sing. The walls resonated with harmonic frequencies that made his skin tingle. Other Valthines moved through the halls, their crystalline bodies glowing in different colors. They all paused to look at him as he passed. Ambassador Hana brought him to a large chamber. The ceiling was high and filled with floating crystals that cast rainbow light across everything. At the center of the room stood Velnus. The elderly Valthine looked much healthier than before. His skin glowed steadily and he stood without his walking staff. Daehyun of Earth, Velnus's translator said, "Thank you for coming." Of course, honored Velnus. I hope the meal did not cause you any problems. Velnus's tendrils moved in what Daehyun was beginning to recognize as a smile. The meal saved my life. But that is not why you are here. Please sit. A chair rose from the floor, forming itself from the same crystal as the walls. Daehyun sat carefully, afraid he might break it. Ambassador Hana stood beside Velnus. Daehyun, what do you know about Coordinator Velnus? Only that he is Valthine, and that he needed help. Coordinator Velnus is the High Coordinator of the Valthine Collective, Hana said. He is the leader of his entire civilization, the equivalent of a president or emperor. Daehyun felt the blood drain from his face. He stood quickly and bowed deeply. I apologize, I did not know. I should have shown proper respect. Sit, please, Velnus said gently. You showed the only respect that matters. You saw a being in need and helped without hesitation. Daehyun sat back down slowly, his mind spinning. He had served mineral water to the leader of an entire alien civilization. He had argued with his manager to help someone who could probably buy the entire station. I don't understand, Daehyun said. Why were you alone? Why didn't you have guards or assistants? Velnus moved closer, his crystalline form catching the light. Because I was testing your species. For 3 months I have traveled through this station in disguise. I have visited 50 establishments while appearing weak and needy. I wanted to see how humans and other species would treat a vulnerable stranger. Why? The Valthine Collective has been isolated for centuries, Ambassador Hana explained. After a terrible war nearly destroyed their species, they retreated to their home systems. They have been debating whether to engage with the larger galactic community again. Velnus's glow dimmed slightly. We needed to know if the galaxy had changed, if compassion still existed among the stars. I visited restaurants, shops, medical centers, transport stations. I appeared weak and asked for help. What happened? Daehyun asked, though he thought he already knew the answer. I was turned away 49 times, Velnus said. Some were polite about it. Many were not. One establishment called security to remove me. Another mocked my age and weakness, not one being offered help without first knowing who I was. The elderly Valthine moved closer still, until he stood directly in front of Daehyun. Until you. You did not ask my name or position. You did not calculate what you might gain. You saw need and you acted. You sacrificed your job, your income, your future on this station. For a stranger. Daehyun felt his throat tighten. It was the right thing to do. Yes, Velnus said. That is precisely why you are here. You gave aid expecting nothing in return. You sacrificed your livelihood for a stranger's comfort. This is the quality we seek. Ambassador Hana stepped forward. The Valthine Collective has decided to open full diplomatic relations with humanity. They want to share technology, establish cultural exchanges, and work together on galactic initiatives. But they have one condition. Daehyun waited, his heart pounding. Velnus's tendrils moved in a complex pattern. We want you, Daehyun of Earth, to become the first human ambassador to the Valthine Collective. The words hung in the air like the floating crystals above them. Daehyun opened his mouth, closed it, then opened it again. No words came out. I know this is overwhelming, Ambassador Hana said with a gentle smile. You're a waiter with no diplomatic training. But the Valthines don't choose ambassadors based on credentials. They choose based on character. I don't understand, Daehyun finally managed. There must be hundreds of qualified diplomats. People who studied for years. People who know how to talk to different species. I just serve food. You served more than food, Velnus said. You served compassion. You served dignity. You served hope to an old being who had almost lost faith in the galaxy. These cannot be taught in any school. Daehyun thought of Yuna, of his tiny quarters, of his empty job search. What would this position involve? Training first, Ambassador Hana said. Cultural immersion, language study, diplomatic protocol. The Valtheans will provide everything you need, and the salary would be substantial, enough to support your family comfortably. How substantial? Hana named a figure that made Dae-hyun's head spin. It was more than he made in 5 years at the restaurant, more than enough to pay for Yuna's entire education and still have plenty left over. There's more, Velnus said. We would establish a scholarship fund in your name. Your sister Yuna would receive full funding for her medical studies. Dae-hyun stood abruptly. How do you know about my sister? We investigated you after our encounter, Ambassador Hana said. We needed to understand who you were. We learned about your family, your struggles, your sacrifices. Everything we found only confirmed what Coordinator Velnus already knew. You are exactly who we need. Dae-hyun walked to the crystal wall and pressed his hand against it. The surface was cool and hummed beneath his palm. Through it, he could see the stars beyond the station. He thought about his grandfather, who had always told him to help others when he could. He thought about Yuna and her dreams of becoming a doctor. He thought about the elderly Valthene who had tested an entire station and found only one person willing to help. He turned back to face Velnus and Ambassador Hana. I don't know if I can do this. I'm not special. I'm not smart like diplomats are. What if I fail? Velnus approached him, moving with grace despite his age. You already succeeded, Dae-hyun. You succeeded the moment you chose kindness over fear. Everything else we can teach you. Dae-hyun took a deep breath. Then yes, I accept. The crystals above them suddenly blazed with brilliant light. The walls sang with harmonic frequencies that filled the chamber with sound like celebration. Velnus's entire body glowed bright blue. Then welcome Ambassador Dae-hyun of Earth, Velnus said. Your training begins tomorrow. Ambassador Hana smiled and extended her hand. Welcome to the Diplomatic Corps. Your life just changed forever. As Dae-hyun shook her hand, he realized she was right. 2 days ago he had been a struggling waiter. Now he was an ambassador to an alien civilization, all because he had helped an elderly stranger who needed mineral water. The galaxy, it seemed, worked in mysterious ways. Dae-hyun barely slept that night. He lay in his small quarters staring at the ceiling, his mind racing. Tomorrow he would begin training to become an ambassador. An ambassador. The word felt foreign in his mouth. At dawn, a message arrived on his datapad. He was to report to the Valthene embassy immediately. A new quarters assignment was attached. When he saw the location, he had to read it 3 times. Level 42 diplomatic residences. That was where the station's elite lived. He gathered his few possessions into a single bag and made his way up. The transport tube rose smoothly through the station's levels, and with each floor the surroundings grew more luxurious. By the time he reached level 42, the corridors were wide and elegant, lined with real plants instead of cheap plastic decorations. His new quarters were larger than his entire previous apartment. Floor-to-ceiling windows showed a breathtaking view of space. There was a real bedroom, a sitting area, even a small kitchen. Dae-hyun stood in the center of it all, turning in slow circles. It's a bit much, isn't it? He spun to find Ambassador Hana standing in the doorway, smiling. I don't need all this, Dae-hyun said. My old place was fine. You're an ambassador now. You'll be hosting guests, conducting meetings, representing both humanity and the Valthenes. You need a proper space. She walked to the window. Besides, you earned this. Get comfortable because your schedule starts in 1 hour. The next weeks blurred together in a storm of information. Dae-hyun was assigned a mentor named Ji-ho, a human xenoanthropologist who had studied the Valthenes for 15 years. Ji-ho was patient but demanding, drilling Dae-hyun on Valthene history, culture, and customs until his head ached. The Valthenes were nearly destroyed 800 years ago, Ji-ho explained one morning, projecting images on the wall. A war with the Krell Dominion. They lost billions. Their homeworld was scarred. They survived only by coming together, by choosing cooperation over conflict. Dae-hyun studied the images of the ancient war. Ruined cities, burned forests, crystalline bodies shattered across battlefields. How did they recover? By making compassion their highest virtue. They rebuilt their civilization on the principle that every life has value. That's why your action mattered so much. You demonstrated that principle without even knowing it. Learning to communicate with Valthenes was the hardest part. They spoke through harmonic frequencies that human vocal cords couldn't produce. Dae-hyun had to use a translator implant, a tiny device injected behind his ear. It took days to adjust to the strange sensation of hearing two things at once, the Valthians' actual speech and the translated words. But sound was only part of it. Valthians also communicated through light patterns in their crystalline bodies. A green shimmer meant contentment. Blue pulses indicated deep thought. Red flickering showed distress. Daehyun spent hours with Velnus learning to read these subtle signals. Your tendrils are drooping, Daehyun observed during one session. Are you tired? Velnus's glow brightened with what Daehyun now recognized as pleasure. Good. You are learning to see, not just look. Yes, I am weary, but it is the weariness of age, not illness. Should we stop for today? No. Teaching you brings me joy. Continue. Daehyun learned about the ritual of shared light, a bonding ceremony where Valthians would synchronize their glowing patterns. He learned that stillness was a sign of respect, that patience was valued above speed, that Valthians took hours to make decisions that humans would make in minutes. They are not slow, Jiho explained. They are thorough. They consider every angle, every consequence. It's frustrating at first, but you'll learn to appreciate it. The cultural immersion was intense, but Daehyun found himself enjoying it. Every day brought new understanding. He began to see patterns in Valthian behavior, to anticipate their responses, to understand the philosophy that shaped their entire civilization. One morning, a message from his old workplace appeared on his datapad. Manager Taewon wanted to meet with him. Daehyun almost deleted it, but curiosity got the better of him. They met at a cafe on level 30. Taewon looked nervous, his expensive suit somehow seeming cheap in the elegant surroundings. He stood when Daehyun arrived, extending his hand. Daehyun, good to see you. You look well. Daehyun shook his hand briefly and sat down. What do you want, Taewon? I heard about your appointment. Ambassador to the Valthians. That's incredible. Taewon smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. I always knew you had potential. That's why I was so hard on you, to push you to be better. Daehyun said nothing. Taewon cleared his throat. Look, I may have been hasty in firing you. The restaurant hasn't been the same without you. Customers keep asking where you went. I was thinking maybe we could work something out. I could hire you back as assistant manager. Better pay, better hours. No. I could make you full manager. You could run the whole place. No, thank you. Taewon's smile faded. You're really going to hold a grudge? I was just doing my job. I'm not holding a grudge, Daehyun said calmly. I'm just busy with my actual job. The one where I represent an entire alien civilization instead of serving overpriced meals to entitled customers. Taewon's face reddened. You think you're better than me now? You got lucky, that's all. You helped one alien and got rewarded for it. Daehyun stood. I helped someone who needed it. That's not luck. That's just being decent. You should try it sometime. He left Taewon sitting alone at the table. Walking away felt better than he had expected. 3 weeks into his training, Daehyun attended his first diplomatic function. The Galactic Council was hosting a reception for new ambassadors. He wore formal diplomatic attire that still felt strange, like playing dress-up in someone else's clothes. The reception hall was enormous, filled with beings from dozens of species. Daehyun recognized Torvan diplomats with their multiple arms, Arkelian traders with their crystalline eyes, even a Krell warrior in ceremonial armor. Ambassador Hana stayed close to him, making introductions. Most diplomats were polite but reserved. A few were openly dismissive. One Torvan ambassador actually laughed when he learned Daehyun's background. A waiter? The Valthians chose a waiter to represent them? The Torvan's forearms gestured in amusement. What's next? A janitor as ambassador to the Krell? Daehyun felt his face burn, but he remembered Velnus's teachings about patience and stillness. He bowed slightly. I am honored by the Valthians' trust. I hope to prove worthy of it. The Torvan snorted and walked away. Ambassador Hana touched Daehyun's arm. Don't let him get to you. Half these diplomats come from rich families. They've never worked a real job in their lives. They don't understand that character matters more than pedigree. Later that evening, back in his quarters, Daehyun's personal communicator chimed. It was a call from Earth, from Yuna. Her face appeared on the screen and she was crying. Daehyun's heart jumped. Yuna, what's wrong? Nothing's wrong. She laughed through her tears. Everything's right. I got accepted to the Interstellar Medical Academy. Full scholarship. They said it's from the Valthine Cultural Exchange Program. Daehyun, did you do this? He smiled, feeling his own eyes sting. The Valthines did it. I just helped an old man who needed mineral water. You're amazing. You know that? You've been taking care of me for years and now this. I can actually become a doctor. A real doctor. They talked for over an hour. Yuna told him about her plans, her excitement, her dreams. When the call ended, Daehyun sat in the darkness of his quarters looking out at the stars. His datapad chimed. A message from Coordinator Velnus, Ambassador Daehyun. Your training has progressed well. I would like to invite you to visit the Valthine homeworld. No human has ever been granted this honor. Will you come? Daehyun's hands shook as he typed his response. It would be my greatest honor, Coordinator. The reply came quickly. Then prepare yourself. We leave in 3 days. You will see wonders that no human eyes have witnessed. You will walk on soil that has been forbidden to outsiders for centuries. And you will understand why we chose you. Daehyun looked out at the stars again. Somewhere out there was the Valthine homeworld, a place of legend and mystery. And he, a former waiter from Earth, would be the first human to see it. He thought about how much his life had changed in just a few weeks. From serving food to serving as an ambassador, from struggling to pay rent to living in luxury, from wondering how to help his sister to seeing her dreams come true, all because he had done one simple thing. He had helped someone who needed it. Sometimes Daehyun realized the smallest actions created the biggest changes, and sometimes being a good person was the most important qualification of all. He went to bed that night with a smile on his face, dreaming of crystal cities and alien worlds of harmony and light, of a future he never could have imagined just a month ago. The Valthine ship was nothing like the human vessels Daehyun had seen. It had no visible engines, no thrusters, no mechanical parts he could identify. The hull was smooth crystal that pulsed with internal light, and when he stepped inside, he felt the entire ship humming around him like a living thing. It operates through harmonic resonance, Coordinator Velnus explained as they settled into the meditation chamber. We do not push through space. We resonate with it, moving in harmony with the universe's frequencies. The journey would take 3 weeks. Daehyun spent the time learning more about Valthine culture and practicing his communication skills. The ship had a small crew of 5 Valthines, all of whom were patient with his mistakes and eager to teach. On the 15th day, one of the crew members, a young Valthine named Kiha, asked Daehyun about Earth. What is it like to live on a world with so many different species of life? Kiha's translator asked. We have read that Earth has millions of distinct creatures. It's beautiful, Daehyun said. Every ecosystem is different. Forests, oceans, deserts, each one filled with life. We had that once, Kiha said, his glow dimming slightly. Before the war. Now our world has recovered, but it is not the same. Many species were lost forever. Daehyun thought about that often during the rest of the journey. A civilization that had lost so much but still chose compassion over bitterness. It made him understand why Velnus had tested the galaxy. The Valthines needed to know that other species valued life as much as they did. On the 21st day, they arrived at the Valthine home system. Daehyun pressed his face to the viewing crystal and gasped. The homeworld hung in space like a massive jewel, its surface glittering with blue and purple light. Welcome to Valthos, Velnus said softly, the first human to see our home. As they descended through the atmosphere, Daehyun saw landscape unlike anything he had imagined. Massive crystal formations rose from the ground like trees some hundreds of feet tall. Forests of bioluminescent plants glowed in shades of green and blue. Rivers flowed with water that seemed to shine from within. The cities were built into the crystal formations themselves. Buildings grew from the rock, their walls transparent and glowing. Valthines moved through the streets, their bodies adding to the light until entire cities blazed like constellations. There are only 3 million Valthines left in the entire galaxy, Velnus said. We were once billions. The war took everything from us except our will to survive and our commitment to life. The ship landed in the capital city of Luminar. Daehyun stepped out onto alien soil for the first time and his legs nearly gave out. The ground itself hummed beneath his feet. The air smelled sweet like honey and flowers. Hundreds of Valthines had gathered to see the human visitor. They stood in respectful silence, their bodies glowing in welcome. Daehyun felt tears on his face. The honor of this moment overwhelmed him. Do not cry, Velnus said gently, or rather cry if you must. We understand that humans express emotion through tears. It is beautiful. That evening, Daehyun was brought to the Chamber of Assembly, where the Valthine governing body met. The chamber was a vast crystalline dome with seats arranged in concentric circles. 200 Valthine leaders sat in meditation, their combined glow turning the chamber into a palace of light. Daehyun stood at the center, feeling very small and very human. Ambassador Daehyun of Earth, the eldest assembly member, spoke. You are the first outsider to address this body in 500 years. Coordinator Velnus has spoken of your character. Now we wish to hear from you directly. Why should the Valthine collective engage with the wider galaxy? Daehyun's mouth went dry. He had prepared no speech. Ambassador Hana had coached him on diplomatic language. But standing here under the gaze of 200 ancient beings, all his training fled. He took a breath and spoke from his heart. I can't tell you what you should do. I'm just a human. I was a waiter a few weeks ago. But I can tell you what I've learned. The galaxy needs what you have, not your technology or your wealth. It needs your compassion. The assembly remained silent, listening. Most species act from self-interest, Daehyun continued. They ask what they can gain before they offer help. But you're different. You value life itself. You choose kindness even when it costs you. That's rare. That's precious. And if you share that with the galaxy, you might inspire others to be better. Before the eldest could respond, alarms shrieked through the chamber. The crystal walls flashed red. Valthines throughout the assembly jumped to their feet, their glows turning agitated patterns of orange and red. A young Valthine rushed into the chamber. Collapse in the lower districts. A crystal formation is fractured. Multiple citizens trapped beneath. The assembly immediately began conferring in rapid harmonic speech. Daehyun couldn't follow the conversation, but he understood the debate. They were discussing procedure, protocol, the proper response. Daehyun didn't wait. He ran. He burst out of the chamber and followed the sound of the alarms. Other Valthines pointed him toward the lower districts, confusion in their glowing patterns. Why was the human running? He found the collapse site 10 minutes later. A massive crystal formation had shattered, bringing down part of the structure built into it. Debris covered the street. He could hear cries from beneath the rubble, voices calling for help in harmonic frequencies his translator barely caught. Local Valthines stood around the site, but they weren't moving. They were analyzing the structure, calculating the safest approach, debating the best method to prevent further collapse. Daehyun didn't understand the hesitation. People were trapped. He grabbed a piece of crystal debris and began pulling it away. Human, wait, one of the Valthines called. We must assess the stability first. People are dying now, Daehyun shouted back. He lifted another piece of debris, his muscles straining. For a moment, the Valthines just stared at him. Then something shifted. Maybe they saw his desperation. Maybe they understood his urgency. Or maybe they just needed someone to break the paralysis of protocol. Other humans from the diplomatic delegation arrived, having followed Daehyun from the assembly. Ambassador Hana took one look at the situation and started pulling debris alongside him. Jiho joined them. Soon all 5 humans were digging frantically. The sight of humans moving with such urgency seemed to galvanize the Valthines. They began to help, using their greater strength to lift larger pieces. Together they worked in harmony, humans providing urgency and Valthines providing precision. After 30 minutes of desperate work, they created an opening. 3 young Valthines crawled out, their crystalline bodies cracked but alive. Medics rushed forward with healing equipment. Daehyun collapsed against a piece of crystal, his hands bleeding, his body exhausted. Coordinator Velnus appeared beside him, the old being's glow pulsing with complex emotions. You did not wait for permission, Velnus said. There wasn't time. No, there was not. Velnus placed a crystalline hand on Daehyun's shoulder. We Valthines prize careful thought. We analyze, we consider, we plan. But sometimes action is more valuable than perfection. You have taught us this today. The assembly reconvened that evening. Daehyun stood before them again, still dirty from the rescue, his hands bandaged. The eldest assembly member's glow had changed from the formal blue to something warmer, almost gold. Ambassador Daehyun, today you showed us something we had forgotten. In our caution, in our careful consideration, we sometimes forget that action has value. That immediate compassion is sometimes better than perfect planning. Another assembly member stood. The coordinator chose well. Humanity acts while we deliberate. They sacrifice before they calculate. Together we could balance wisdom with action. One by one, the assembly members began to glow in synchronization, their lights pulsing together in agreement. It was the ritual of shared light, but on a massive scale. The entire chamber blazed like a sun. "The assembly has decided," the eldest proclaimed. "We will establish full diplomatic relations with humanity. We will share our knowledge and our technology. We will work together to make the galaxy better." Daehyun felt his legs go weak. He had done it. Not through perfect speeches or diplomatic skill, but by being himself. By acting when action was needed that night. Velnus visited him in his guest quarters. The old being moved slowly, settling into a chair that formed from the floor. "I must tell you something," Velnus said. "Something I have told no one else. 800 years ago, during the war, my child was trapped in a burning building. I could have rushed in to save them. But I followed protocol. I waited for rescue equipment. I calculated the safest approach." Velnus's glow dimmed to almost nothing. "By the time we acted, it was too late. My child died because I valued procedure over immediate action. I have lived with that regret every day since Daehyun said nothing, letting the old being speak. When I saw you run toward danger today, I saw the courage I wish I had shown. You did not think of protocol or safety. You only thought of saving lives. You are what I should have been. What all of us should strive to be." "I'm sorry for your loss," Daehyun said quietly. "Thank you. But I tell you this so you understand the gift you have given me. By choosing you, by seeing humans act with such immediate compassion, I have found a kind of peace. The galaxy still has beings who will run toward danger to help others. That gives me hope." Daehyun returned to Nexus Prime 3 weeks later, as humanity's official ambassador to the Valthine Collective. News of the Alliance had spread across the galaxy, and the station buzzed with excitement and speculation. Everywhere he went, people stared, some with admiration, others with envy or suspicion. The Galactic Council called an emergency session 2 days after his return. Daehyun sat in the observers' gallery with Ambassador Hana, watching as representatives from dozens of species debated the human-Valthine alliance. "This is unprecedented," declared Ambassador Warren, a Torvan with elaborate ceremonial markings. "The Valthines have isolated themselves for centuries. Now they suddenly ally with humans, the youngest spacefaring species? There must be hidden motives." A Krell warrior diplomat slammed his fist on his podium. "The Valthines possess technology far beyond most species. If humans gain exclusive access, it will upset the galactic power balance." The debate continued for hours. Some species welcomed the alliance, others feared it. But one thing became clear. Many on the council did not believe humans deserved this honor. Finally, the council chair called for order. She was a Novan, tall and elegant with silver skin that rippled like water. "The council acknowledges concerns about this alliance. Therefore, we propose a test." Daehyun leaned forward in his seat. "Ambassador Daehyun will be given one task," the chair continued. "If he succeeds, the alliance stands unchallenged. If he fails, the Valthines must open their agreements to all council species equally." "What's the task?" Ambassador Hana whispered urgently. The chair's expression was grave. "For 40 years, the Krevix and Nomarian species have been in conflict over territorial rights to the moon Epsilon 7. The dispute has resulted in violence, economic sanctions, and deep mistrust. 3 experienced diplomatic teams have failed to resolve it. Ambassador Daehyun will have 1 month to succeed where they failed." The gallery erupted in whispers. Daehyun felt his stomach drop. This was impossible. He had been an ambassador for barely 2 months. How could he solve a decades-old conflict? Ambassador Hana's face was pale. "This is a setup. They want you to fail." That evening, Daehyun met with Jiho in his quarters. His mentor spread documents across the table, charts and reports and historical data about the Krevix-Nomarian conflict. "The dispute started over fishing rights," Jiho explained. "Epsilon 7 has rich oceans. Both species claimed historical precedent. Small disagreements became larger ones. Now both sides have invested so much pride and resources that neither can back down without losing face." Daehyun studied the reports until his eyes burned. The more he read, the more hopeless it seemed. Both species had legitimate grievances. Both had suffered losses. How could one person bridge 40 years of hatred? He barely slept that night. At dawn, he sent messages to both the Krevix and Nomarian ambassadors. He requested a meeting. not in a formal council chamber, not with mediators and protocols, just a simple meal together. Both sides were suspicious but agreed. 3 days later, Dae-hyun stood in a small kitchen he had rented in the station's neutral district. He wore simple clothes, not his ambassador's uniform. On the counter were ingredients from both Krevix and Nomarian cultures. He had spent 2 days researching their cuisines, their traditional dishes, their comfort foods. Not fancy restaurant meals, home cooking, the kind of food mothers made for their children. Commander Bora arrived first, representing the Krevix. She was a stern military officer with scales that shifted from blue to green. She looked around the simple kitchen with obvious confusion. "What is this, Ambassador?" "Dinner," Dae-hyun said simply. "Please sit." Envoy Taeyang arrived moments later, representing the Nomarians. He was tall and thin with pale skin and large dark eyes. He looked even more confused than Bora. "I thought this was a negotiation," Taeyang said. "It is, but I'm not a trained diplomat. I'm just a cook. So let's eat together and talk like people, not representatives." Dae-hyun served them both. For the Krevix, he had prepared kalashi, a seafood stew traditionally made by Krevix families. For the Nomarians, he made tara bread with spiced vegetables, a dish served at Nomarian celebrations. Both ambassadors stared at their plates in shock. "How do you know these recipes?" Bora asked quietly. "I researched. I learned. I wanted to honor both your cultures." They ate in silence at first. Then Bora spoke. "My grandmother used to make kalashi like this." "She's been dead for 20 years. Taeyang nodded slowly. "Tara bread was my mother's specialty. I haven't tasted it this good since I left home." Dae-hyun sat down with his own simple meal. "I want to tell you something. I'm not here because I'm smart or skilled. I'm here because a few months ago I helped an elderly alien who needed food. That's it. That's my entire qualification. One act of kindness." Both ambassadors watched him. "I lost my job for helping that stranger. I had no money, no prospects, no future. But I didn't regret it because it was the right thing to do, and somehow that one choice changed my entire life." He looked at both of them. "You're both representatives of your people. You carry their hopes and their anger. But you're also just people. So I want to ask you, not as ambassadors but as people, what small act of understanding could change everything?" Silence filled the room. Bora's scales shifted to darker colors. Taeyang's large eyes glistened. Finally Bora spoke, her voice rough. "My son died in a skirmish over Epsilon 7's territorial waters. He was 19 years old. A Nomarian patrol ship fired on his vessel." Dae-hyun's heart clenched. This was worse than he thought. "I'm sorry," Taeyang said quietly. "I did not know." "No one knows," Bora said. "Military families are expected to grieve in private, to stay strong. But every day I wake up and my child is gone, and I'm supposed to negotiate calmly about the place where he died." Taeyang was quiet for a long moment. Then he spoke, his voice barely a whisper. "My brother was the captain of that patrol ship. He reported a Krevix vessel in restricted waters. When it didn't respond to hails, he fired warning shots. One hit your son's ship." Bora's head snapped up. "Warning shots?" "My brother didn't mean to kill anyone, but the guilt destroyed him. He took his own life 2 years later. I've never told anyone that truth either." The room went silent again. Dae-hyun said nothing. He just let them sit with this revelation. Bora's voice cracked. "Both our children, lost to this stupid conflict. Over fishing rights," Taeyang said bitterly. "Over pride and territory and things that matter so much less than lives." They sat together, two parents who had lost children to the same senseless conflict. Dae-hyun quietly refilled their drinks and stepped back, giving them space. When Bora finally spoke again, her voice was different, softer. "What if the moon became something else? Not Krevix territory or Nomarian territory. What if it became a memorial?" Taeyang looked up. "A memorial? For those who died in this conflict. Both our species. A place of remembrance and peace. And research." Taeyang added, his voice gaining strength. "Joint research. Our species working together, honoring the dead by building something for the living." They talked for hours. Dae-hyun mostly listened, occasionally asking questions, serving more food when plates emptied. By the end of the evening, the outline of an agreement had formed. Epsilon 7 would become a joint memorial and research station. Both species would have equal rights. The resources would be shared, and most importantly, It would stand as a reminder of what conflict costs and what cooperation can build. The Galactic Council was stunned when the agreement was presented a week later. 40 years of conflict resolved in days. The chair could barely hide her shock as she approved the treaty. Afterward, Warren, the Torvan ambassador, approached Daehyun. "How did you do it?" "I fed them home cooking and asked them to remember why fighting matters less than living." Warren stared at him for a long moment, then laughed. "The galaxy's newest ambassador is smarter than all of us. We forgot that diplomats are people first." That evening, Daehyun walked through the station's commercial district. Without really thinking about it, he found himself standing outside the Golden Nebula restaurant. Through the window, he could see a new manager directing staff. The place looked the same, but something felt different. Smaller somehow. A young waiter approached him at the door. "Table for one, sir?" Daehyun smiled. "No, thank you. I was just remembering something." He walked to the station's food court instead, a simple place where workers ate cheap meals. He ordered noodles from a human vendor and sat at a plain table watching the crowd. These were his people, the ordinary workers who kept the station running. The cleaners and technicians and servers who did honest work for little recognition. His datapad chimed. A message from Yuna. She had arrived at the station for a visit. He met her at the transport terminal, and when she saw him, she ran into his arms like she used to when she was little. "Look at you," she said, laughing and crying at the same time. "My brother, the ambassador." "Look at you," he replied. "My sister, the future doctor." They walked through the station together, Yuna chattering excitedly about her studies. She had been selected for a special program training with Valthene medical technology. In a few years, she would be able to save lives in ways current medicine couldn't imagine. "None of this would have happened without you," she said. "You gave up everything to help me."